Hello, and welcome back to Teachers Help Teachers. I'm your host, Esther Yoon, and with me today are two guest hosts, two teachers from LAUSD. We have Veronica Pikor. She is a kindergarten teacher. She's taught for 16 years. The last 2 years, she's implemented CGI, cognitive guided instruction in math. She's attended many workshops about CGI, and her school currently works with a CGI coach, and she herself has worked with this coach implementing CGI the last 2 years. And in our bottom screen, Marie Ortega joins us. She is a current second grade teacher. She's taught for 20 years. She works at a gifted magnet school, being a part of that program the last 7 years. She's filled coordinator positions along with teaching positions, and she is a national board certified teacher. And she too, her school rather, has a CGI coach who works closely with them to implement CGI with integrity. And so thank you so much, teachers, for being here. Last episode, if you follow Teachers Help Teachers closely, you joined Alicia Jackson and me while we discussed CGI instruction and its principles, along with evidence of strategies our math students would use to solve problems, particularly story problems, right? Today, let's take a closer look at CGI implementation with Veronica and Marie. So let me share the CGI principles, because that will drive our conversation today between the three of us. So audience, please pause at this point and read through the 7 CGI principles for context, and then press play so that you can join us in our discussion. Okay? All right, so I'm gonna stop share that, assuming that our audience have read through it. So Veronica, let's start with you. How do the CGI principles make sense to you as a teacher?
For me, I feel like it helps me focus on the goals of like how we should teach math the CGI focus. And it's kind of like a reminder to me of like the culture that I'm trying to build in the math classroom. So for example, a few of the principles that you read before, like principle number 1, the bottom line is they're all mathematicians. So trying to portray that. And even principle number 2, where to have a growth mindset, which is a reminder to me to continue to work towards that for my students, to help them build that mindset.
Thank you. And how about you, Marie? How do the principles?
Yeah, reading through the principles on an ongoing basis with my planning, I really always have that mentality in mind that students come with something, they always come with something to bring to the table. And I think the teacher's lesson delivery, that has so much to do with whether the students feel that they're going to bring something into the lesson or whether they don't. And so I think from the beginning, from your lesson planning, it just helps orient the thinking, the conversation, the questions that you're going to direct towards students in a way that it's student oriented, that it comes from the knowledge that they come from, and also trying to find that craft where you bring the student knowledge together, because you're going to have students with different perspectives, different math abilities, different ways of seeing math, seeing numbers. And so it really takes that teacher's craft to bring it all together and have fun, as I had.
And I agree and see your way, Veronica, and your way too, Marie. But I'll be honest, before CGI training, I was not as generous and patient as the both of you with my math students. I was like, either you have it or you don't. If you don't, I need to figure out how to get you there. But I didn't quite understand how to do it effectively. Mm-hmm. And for me, and I shared this during the training, that it really revealed my biases about who can learn math and who cannot. Mm-hmm. And to me, I'm grateful for that CGI training, because it revealed to me that every student mm-hmm. is capable of learning math. Every student is a mathematician. Mm-hmm. So CGI instruction, right? A lot of it is questioning, right? Because if you notice the first 3 principles, it's student-centered. It's what students are able to do. It's what students can reveal. And as teachers, we want to pull that out of them, right? By asking the right kind of questions. So I want to know from you, Marie, let's start with you. How does CGI steer you to ask the right kind of questions, from the surface level learning to then the deeper level learning?
And when I saw that question, I was thinking of, like, what do I do when I start engaging with students when we're doing problem solving? And some of my initial questions that are very surface level are, can you draw a picture to match your thinking? And that's actually a little bit higher level, but kind of tell me what you were thinking about, and depending on what the child's response is where the direction that you go with your questioning, right? And so those are two of my basic questions. Like, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me about your approach. And then I follow, can you draw a picture to match your thinking? And that's interesting sometimes, because sometimes it's a direct correlation between, say, the base 10 blocks and their picture. And sometimes it's not. And it's very interesting when it's not, because the kids have so much to say about their representation. Mm-hmm. Another entry level question would be, can you explain what you've done so far? And going deeper, I really enjoy the questions that lean more towards, can you show your thinking with a different strategy? Is there another way to represent what you're thinking? Mm-hmm. And you just see the thinking, that you really need that wait time, right? You really need that wait time with the students, because you could see it in their eyes how they're thinking about, wait, is there another way to think about this? And secondly, another way that I love to extend their thinking is looking at somebody else's work. And so in my classroom, we collect our problem solving in a journal. And I love the journals because they go back to their journal entries and they say, wait, last time I did something like this with this type of problem. And then sometimes when they have a math partner, they'll remember what their math partner did and reflect and think about that, And so finding another way to represent their thinking, and also questioning the thinking that was done by another student is another good way to get at that deeper level thinking in our classrooms.
And you're definitely illustrating the point of it being student-centered, because mm-hmm. of student collaboration and mm-hmm. student discussion artifacts. Mm-hmm. And what about you, Veronica? How does CGI steer you as a facilitator, as a teacher, from asking surface level questions and surface level learning of your students to deeper level?
So when I saw that question, the first thing that popped in my head was CGI doesn't steer my instruction. It's the student's thinking that steers my instruction. Mm-hmm. So I think that's like the main focus of CGI, where it's all about their thinking. So then it becomes kind of like a very genuine conversation with what you want to know about their thinking. Books and the CGI idea is that you kind of just want to know, like, where can they push their thinking to the next level? And the question would be like, why? Why did you do that? How did you do that? Or can you tell me more about it? Is there something else you could have done? So it's very like a very organic conversation, because again, just like no two students are alike, their responses are not going to be the same at all. And so I think that's where one of my favorite things about CGI is with counting collections, especially in kindergarten. So when I walk around and I something pops up and I just, I have my scheduled students, and then sometimes something pops up and I just want to genuinely know, well, why did you do that? And so is there another way that you could have organized your dinosaurs or whatever, something like that. So it gives me the confidence, I think, to be able to have those genuine conversations with them, because I want to know where they're at, so that then I can find out if since I know the trajectory, then I know if I ask them these certain questions, it'll take them to the next level. And I think that's what CGI has done for me. It's kind of just build my confidence to have those types of questions for them.
What do you do in your classroom that is CGI? Concrete examples.
Okay, so my lesson for math for the day would start with a 10 to 12 minute number sense activity. So a number talk, it could be, oh my gosh, what do you notice? Like when you post one of the images of what do you notice? So it would be a very simple, basic number sense routine, a choral counting, right? That will lead you into the idea of what's going to be in the main lesson. And the main lesson for me, it's so basic and simple, and some people might get uncomfortable with it, but it's either counting collections or number story. And that's pretty much my my two options that I've chosen at this point in my knowledge of CGI, and those are the two options for my core lesson. And then the most important part, I think, of a CGI lesson would be a debrief, and that you can't cut it out. Like, so I feel like the debrief is to me the most important, one of the most important parts, because that's when students get to hear, or like where I think most of our teaching kind of comes in, where you're like, oh, look at what Marie did. This was her strategy, and so can you come up and explain what you did? So it's kind of like that community building part. So that's my skeleton, but obviously we want to make sure we hit the standards, and we want to make sure we hit the math practices and things like that. But that's pretty much my skeleton of like what my daily lesson would look like. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what about you, Marie?
For myself, I think I have a similar routine. Before I tried to maintain, I think that first semester, we did so many of the routines that we would start with a number talk, or we would start with choral counting, SD mysteries, which is a pictorial vase with beads inside of it, and they would have to estimate how many are in there. And I would give them, the SD mysteries in particular, it's a website you can go to, has 4 clues. It's like the number does not include any odd or even numbers, or odd numbers, and a few clues similar to that. And that I was able to do online through remote learning, and the kids loved, they had their little notebook ready, they're ready with their numbers. So that's something I would definitely continue. So I would continue with counting collections or problem solving.
And all of these examples that Veronica and Marie, you have shared, it allows for that student discourse and that student collaboration that needs to happen. Thank you so much for joining me today on Teachers Help Teachers, talking to us about CGI implementation. Have a great day.